Hey everyone, I'm Boater.
I'm Jen.
And welcome to Boater Cooks Something. We've got a really special episode planned out for you for the last episode of Season 1. Today, we are cooking chicken Riggies. Let's cook something. Jen, what can you tell us about chicken Riggies?
So, chicken Riggies are a dish that comes from the Utica, New York area. It's a very central New York dish. I don't know too much about its background, but I've heard that it's sort of a combination of the many different cultures that make up the central New York area, primarily being Italian, but also with some German and Irish influences. So this dish has a very Italian base, but you can also taste some other elements from other cultures in it as well.
Moreover, it's one that has a lot of variants. A lot of people can do it different ways, and it's still quite recognizably chicken Riggies. So it's one that after doing it a couple times, you can add your own spin pretty easily. So let's see what we're going to need. Ingredient board, right small please, because there's a lot.
2 to 4 chicken breasts. 6 to 8 hot cherry peppers.
You got the whole ones?
Yes.
Okay, it's a lot.
I'm not going to use the whole thing.
1 slab of butter.
Butter's in the fridge. Butter is not in the fridge. Butter's in the fridge.
3 tablespoons of minced garlic.
You shame me. I like cutting my own garlic.
That's fair. That's how I got the recipe from her originally. I then
It's the Italian in me.
lazified it.
It's the American in you.
1 onion.
So,
You can use yellow or white onions. I just like white onions.
1 green pepper.
You can use 2 of these if you like.
1 bunch of scallions.
Scallions.
also known as green onions.
1 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes.
I always told you to.
You told me to. You can thick it up a bit by just using one. It still works out pretty well. Except that she was right. Usually I cook for 4 people with this recipe, but I forgot that we were doing about double that. So we ended up using a second can of stuff to thin it out anyway. So kind of depends on how many people you're doing. Thicker sauce, use 1. Thinner sauce, use 2. Each can roughly feeds about 4 people. Thin it out a little bit, that goes 6 to 8.
1/2 pint of heavy cream.
8 fluid ounces.
Half pint.
1 cup of cooking wine.
Cooking sherry, you can use any kind of wine. It's just the original recipe I used called for sherry.
8 ounces of Parmesan cheese.
This is also going to help thicken things up at the end.
I use 2 cans of a bigger thing of Parmesan. So, that's what I usually end up doing.
Italian seasoning.
Italian seasoning.
Because Italian.
Riggies.
I usually use about 3/4 of a bag per person. Riggies stands for rigatoni. In this case, we're going to be using stuffed rigatoni. Where I grew up, I went to this one restaurant that prepared chicken Riggies with stuffed rigatoni, and that's the way that I fell in love with it. That's the way that I liked it, so that's the way that I make my own. Everyone else likes it that way, but I have had it anyway, so our brothers continue to cook it that way.
When I don't use stuffed rigatoni, I will end up using something like tortellini or cheese ravioli as well.
Chicken torties.
Yes, chicken torties. Those will also work and give a sort of similar feel. And if you don't have stuffed rigatoni near you, which is a very distinct possibility, then other cheese stuffed pastas will work. So we're going to make the sauce tonight, and then when it's ready to serve is when we can do the pasta itself. Yeah, let's get to work, because this is going to take a while.
So usually what I end up doing when I make chicken Riggies and when I explain to others how to do it is I go through phases. In phase 1, what you do is you heat up your main saucepan. In this case, we're going to be making 2 batches because I have a friend who's vegetarian and he does not want the chicken, he just wants the Riggies. So heaven forbid some chicken foodies get in his food.
Remember when I said if you don't like chicken, what are you doing making a chicken recipe? This one has so much other stuff in it that even though chicken is part of the title, it's excusable for the vegetarian to want it for the other stuff.
So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take a pat of butter and put it into your saucepan.
Roughly a tablespoon or whatever, just enough to coat the bottom.
Just enough to coat the bottom and cook the onions in. So you're going to let that melt down. As that is melting down, you're going to want to stir it once in a while. Keep an eye on it so again it doesn't burn. The next thing that you're going to be doing is dicing up your onion. You can either dice it or cut it into long strips, or even cutting it into bigger chunks. I prefer bigger chunks for this. We're going to be dicing it. I find it helps to peel your onions underwater, by the way. It helps reduce the crying.
While she's working on the onions, I'm going to start on the scallions, just dicing them up. What I'm going to be doing is kind of eyeballing our ingredients into our 2 separate batches over here. Approximately a quarter into here and then the rest over here. This is going to be so nice with 2 people working on it. Do you usually have help when you're working on Riggies, John?
I try to find help if I can.
It does make it go a lot easier. When I've made Riggies on my own, I end up putting on like Star Wars or something, and by the time the movie's done, I'm usually done with the sauce. To give you an idea of how long this can take. But it's worth it. In addition to the butter on the bottom of your pan, you can also take some of the oil from the jar, not too much, again, just to coat the bottom of the pan. We don't want our onions and such to burn up, so this is just going to help that. Oh, those are nice. Want a whiff? Those are good. Well, I'm an idiot. Oh yeah, I'm gonna split the green onions. Totally didn't. That's about even. Close enough. Your garlic also gets added during this phase. I would say that's enough garlic. By enough, I mean probably too much, but whatever. There's no such thing.
I prefer a lot of garlic. Just check to make sure that all the pieces are pretty much the same size. No super big chunks. If you do find some, just break them or cut them. Alright, so the next part we're going to be doing is the chicken. What you're going to be doing? Yes, phase 2. Phase 1, all of those are done. Generally speaking, by the time that you're done cutting up the chicken, all of that's going to be done cooking. You're going to want to normally bounce between the two, cut, stir, cut, stir. I have an assistant for that. So,
she has an assistant. I'm letting the guests do all the work. This is awesome.
Last time I made you grate cheese by hand.
Dutch angle.
The first thing that I usually do is I coat the bottom of my bowl with Italian seasoning. I'll be adding more later, but the cut up chicken then gets tossed into that and it helps to kind of mix it around a bit more.
Once again, not using our salt and pepper fallback, instead using the Italian seasoning on it.
You can use whatever seasonings you like. I just find that the generic Italian seasoning mix has a pretty good mix to it.
That's another thing that you can kind of customize on your own when you're comfortable with the recipe.
If you want to throw a bay leaf in the sauce, you can throw a bay leaf in the sauce. If you want to throw, I don't know, more oregano.
You want to throw curry into it? Let me know how that comes out for you. Whoa! Oh, okay, I just got that face bowl you were talking about.
Yeah.
This is like a bazooka, locked and loaded.
Did you say walked and loaded?
Locked and loaded. Locked and loaded.
So you can cut your chicken into one of many ways. I generally do thin strips. Depending on how thick your chicken is, I would butterfly it, fillet it, whatever it is. Cut it down the middle this way. Since this is a relatively thin piece, I leave it as it is, and then I just do very long, thin strips. I find that it cooks nicely this way. It's a little fancier than just the chunks. And then the really long pieces, I cut down the middle so you get even a little more chicken. The other nice thing about cutting your chicken in half this way first is that you end up with what seems like more chicken in your sauce. I find it helps the chicken stretch a little bit more. It's nice having a nice sharp knife to do this with.
Yeah, you saw episode 2, right? First time I used that knife. Oh my god, that is a good knife. I basically sliced
Yeah, I know,
this.
you sliced the damn thing in half. Thank you, IKEA.
This is another point where having an assistant works out pretty well because while she stays all chicken hand, I'm able to get another dusting of our seasoning in there.
You can glop it on there pretty heavily if you'd like. There you go. You can't really have too much because anything that falls off the chicken then ends up in the sauce anyway.
True.
At this point, we're going to be mixing the chicken together, and this is where it's very handy to have an assistant. I will have very chickeny, very gross hands. An assistant with clean hands, hopefully, so that just in case you don't add enough of your Italian seasoning, you can have them add more. There, that's good. That's not too much, because there's never too much.
Never too, but oh my god.
How are those onions coming along?
These are looking pretty decent.
With your hands in the air like you just don't care.
Should we use a separate spoon for Josh's bath?
Yes.
From here on out, you see we've got 2 spoons on the plate. The one on the right is for the right pot.
Same idea as having your meat cutting board and your non-meat cutting board. So get you a meat spoon and a non-meat spoon. Meat spoon. So right now I'm just adding the chicken in, kind of separating it as I dump it in so that we don't get giant clumps of chicken. I mean, it'll kind of break up and it'll cook around anyway as we mix and as we cook, so.
You want me to put about a quarter of your chicken into your vegetarian pot?
Put in that one mystery piece. Let's play a game. And now I wash my hands. Next I'm going to be dicing the green pepper. I prefer green peppers for two reasons. One, it adds some color to the otherwise red sauce. Two, they're cheaper than orange or red or yellow.
What's the typical amount that you end up spending at the grocery store each time that you go to make Riggies?
Oh, it very much depends on how many I'm
have.
cooking for.
I, on average, am looking at like 35 bucks.
That sounds about right. For 20 people, I end up spending around $100.
While she's working on the green peppers, I'm going to be working on the hot peppers over here. Just cutting them into roughly centimeter-sized chunks. If you cut hot peppers before, you know this. If you haven't, please make sure that you haven't been cut anywhere on your hand in the last week. That thing's gonna sting.
If you do, make sure to wear latex gloves, assuming you don't have a latex allergy.
Sucks to be you.
Disregard information.
With the hot peppers, usually these are, you know, a mix of red and green. Oh, I can do that! Ah! And also keep in mind while you're working on these, just keep stirring. Especially keep an eye on your chicken. Turn its heat up a little bit. It should be a little more towards medium heat rather than low heat, so just make sure that that's cooking pretty thoroughly.
I'm going to be opening up the can of crushed tomatoes and pouring that in. That is the base of our sauce. You don't really want to cook your peppers like you want to cook down your onions, your garlic. Also make sure that your chicken is done cooking before you do this. If your chicken is not done cooking, just be patient.
If you're doing it on your own, typically by the time that you're done cutting your peppers, then it's ready for the sauce to go and your chicken's all cooked. But when you have people helping you out, there's still some waiting time that needs to be done. As soon as you're done with your hot peppers, wash your hands, even if you're like, oh, you know, it's gonna be fine. Somehow it's gonna find its way up a nail or something.
When I added the red sauce, I also turned the heat down because you don't really want it to boil, you just want it to be warmed. Normally, what I do, oh, my glasses are quite far. Normally what I do is I drain out the extra water that ends up cooking out of the chicken. You can leave the water in there, it's not really going to hurt anything, it's just going to make your sauce a bit thinner. I'm going to turn the heat down, add the red sauce. Next I'm going to add my green peppers. After you add the sauce to your ingredients, I suppose, you're going to let it simmer for about 10 minutes. I'm also going to add some Italian seasoning to the vegetarian version of the sauce just because whereas we get plenty from the chicken, we did not get any from my vegetarian friend. Next thing we're going to be adding is some heavy cream. Around where I'm from, I can never find heavy cream, I can only find whipping cream. It's the same thing.
What this is going to do is kind of offset how spicy some of your other ingredients are.
It also thickens it quite a bit.
So this is kind of going to be a to taste kind of thing. If you have a couple people that don't like it as spicy and everyone else does like it spicy, just make sure you have a gallon of milk for the other people. Actually, hold on.
Something else that also tends to make your sauce very spicy is at the beginning we use the hot pepper sauce to cook down your onions. You can just use regular old olive oil for that. I like using the peppers because I think it adds some nice spice and flavor. At this point your sauce is going to be a very orangey or pinky color.
Let simmer for about 10 minutes. This is kind of the second half of the recipe where it's add something, wait, add something, wait, add something, wait.
This is usually about the time that I do dishes. So the next thing that we're going to be adding is the cooking wine. Normally I add about a cup, because 2 cups we're just going to be adding the whole thing for tons of flavor.
She said a cup or 2 cups for flavor, and even when I'm cooking for 4 people, I'm like, flavor!
Alcohol!
Flavor, alcohol.
I've used other kinds of wine in the past. Someone I was cooking with had a nice bottle of Merlot that they weren't going to be able to finish that night, so we mixed it in with the sauce and then we had the Merlot with dinner. It worked out quite nicely. And this you are going to want to cook down for a little while just to let the flavor really seep into everything.
That, and you'll notice that adding that definitely thinned out your sauce a bit too, so cooking it down is going to help tighten that back up a little too. Although that'll mainly be with the next step.
This isn't a can, I guess a container.
A canister.
A canister of Parmesan cheese. This is just to thicken your sauce. When I first did it, I used cornstarch or flour to thicken the sauce. But a friend of mine who's very crafty told me that Parmesan cheese worked just as well and also added some good flavor. I have done with that ever since then.
I couldn't imagine it any other way.
If your Parmesan cheese ends up being really thick chunks, like maybe it's been sitting around a while, you may want to sift it first. I don't know if you have a sifter. You have a real sifter, and not a baby sifter for baby cooks.
And that's pretty much it for the sauce, right?
Yeah, I can't really think of anything that we may have missed. I will say along the way, if you want to add something like mushrooms or black olives to your sauce, which many people do around here, you would add it around the same time that you add your green peppers.
The only thing left to do after you've got your sauce ready is obviously the pasta itself. We're not going to be doing that today because, as I already said, this is actually going to be for a party tomorrow. Stuffed pasta is actually already cooked. So basically what you're doing is warming it up. You start your water boiling around the last phase or the second to last phase. 2 to 4 minutes. Once it starts floating to the surface, it's warmed up.
And then I use some kind of slotted spoon to just scoop out the pasta as it's cooked, put it in the top, or put it in the pot of sauce. Once it's all cooked, that one batch of pasta, I just add the next bag into the same water.
I do a very similar thing except with
I was looking for that, but I couldn't find it.
We're going to do our normal closing remarks right now because tomorrow is New Year's Eve party and there's going to be 7 or 8 people here and who knows if we're going to feel like it. So, yeah. Chicken Riggies. It's a really complicated, long process, but it's totally worth it in the end. It's a great pasta dish. Use it with stuffed pasta. Use it with regular pasta if you want. I've used the leftover sauce like that sometimes.
I think what's really nice about it is that if you feel like it, you can make up a giant pot like this ahead of time and then put it in individual, let's say like Glad containers, put it in the freezer, and you've got sauce throughout the year when you want it.
Bring the sauce.
Maybe not throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, year's a little, then all of a sudden your vegetables have turned to mush. You know, freeze them one time. Best had fresh, fine for leftovers for a little bit. Thank you so much for watching Boater Cook Something. It's meant so much to me to have you as viewers throughout the whole season. You've been great. I've loved your feedback. You've all been very enthusiastic. I don't know how long it'll be until I start season 2, but there will be a season 2 of Boater Cook Something. So stay tuned, get me any recipe ideas that you have. I will try them myself. I can't guarantee that they'll be on the show, because if I try them and I'm like, I blow up my kitchen or something, it's not going to be a show. But yeah, feedback, recipe ideas, and I will see you all whenever Season 2, Episode 1 of Boater Cook Something arrives. Until then, I still don't have a catchphrase.
We didn't destroy a cutting board yet.
Nope.
Washing the hands.
Cut.
Well, yeah. You take, you have this little, it's a setup they have to do.
Yeah, I have disruptive friends, so there's no way that I was recording an actual closing statement, but look, we have Riggies!
And then you...
Yeah, Riggies, and yeah, Boater Cook Something. See you guys next season.